Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, will change in the oversight of power utility Eskom make any difference to its performance? President Cyril Ramaphosa announced yesterday the Energy Department will soon take responsibility for overseeing the state-owned company. This has been a long time coming. In 2021, Deputy President David Mabuza informed Parliament of the possible move. He said this would create better alignment and oversight between Eskom and the department. Let's talk about this now with energy economist Lungile Mashele, as well as Professor Sampson Mamphweli from the South African National Energy Development Institute. To the both of you, good morning and thank you very much for your time. So essentially, what we're going to see here is the minister in charge of the country's overall energy strategy and regulations overseeing Eskom. Some South Africans obviously don't want to celebrate prematurely without fully understanding what the benefits of this move honestly are, if at all. Just talk us through what actually this would mean for citizens. Perhaps to start with you, Professor Mamphweli.
Good morning to you and the viewers. Good morning, Lungile. I would like to caution that while that move could be a good one in terms of alignment with the department, between the department and Eskom, so far we don't have a feasibility study or any scientific document that tells us that that move will work. We're still sitting with an ANC resolution that needs to be processed. Cabinet needs to take a resolution as the shareholder, and the Eskom board needs to have to do a concurrence on that. That's a process on its own that needs to take its own course. But let's go back quickly to the reason why the Department of Public Enterprises was established. It was basically because there was a need, or government saw a need to consolidate all SOEs in one in terms of oversight and all that. And also there was the issue about efficiency so that we can have work can be done much more efficiently. So the current move, if you look globally, it could work because it's got nothing to do with which department is providing oversight. In terms of alignment, I agree with the ANC on that and the president on that. Whether it will work or not, we cannot answer that question at the moment because there is no study that has been provided that can provide that particular answer. We will only see when it happens whether it will work or not.
Ms. Mashele, your take, because honestly citizens are sitting at home thinking at this point they couldn't really be worried about who is the political head at the helm. They just want consistent power. So would this move in any way, according to you, lead to that consistency in energy for people at home and even for their businesses?
So I would definitely like to caution that it's not the silver bullet that people may think that this is. All it will look at is accountability and placing it in the department that does the policy, does the planning, does the strategy, and now all they're simply doing is that bringing in the accountability element through the shareholder compact, which will then lie within the DMRE. In terms of will it improve Eskom's financial situation, that is unfounded yet. Whether it will improve their technical situation, that is unfounded yet. What we do know is that the difference between the two ministers at the helm, Minister Bodan and Minister Mantashe, is that Minister Mantashe is more of a hands-on minister. He has spoken very openly about what his requirements of Eskom are and what its failings are and where it can possibly improve. So having that change of leadership, plus the incoming Eskom CEO or COO when they do join, plus the new board, that might herald that change. But the move alone to DMRE is not going to bring that massive change that we're looking for. That is not a move to ensure energy security. That is a move for alignment and for easier processing and removing red tape.
Perhaps let's touch on some of the strong views that Minister Mantashe has held over the years pertaining to Eskom, particularly the very contentious 15,000 to 20,000 megawatts that he's spoken of that are standing idle. There have been different views on that, some saying he's misrepresenting what exactly is. Where do you stand on this if we had to settle? Do they have the 15,000 megawatts that are standing idle, or this is what would need to be maintained. It's out of service.
So it's
I believe you
certainly...
directly.
Lungile, maybe you can just
Okay,
tackle that one
you
for
can
us.
go ahead.
Yes, sure. So the minister is correct if you look at mathematically that is installed capacity. However, it is not available capacity. We do not count on that capacity at all. Where the minister has been pushing is to say, let Eskom do the required reliability maintenance in order to make that capacity available capacity. And this is where Eskom has been failing for the last 2.5 years. And the COO has been very clear on this topic to say they've had to push back or to defer their reliability maintenance in order to carry out, in order to not load shed at extreme levels, to ensure that little bit of energy security, but also because they've been having funding challenges, operational challenges, they're not able to plan for maintenance. So those are some of the issues that have hindered us making that capacity into available capacity.
Professor Mamphweli, your views on this, because when we speak maintenance, it seems that with most of them, they agree that there should be adequate maintenance more frequently at that even. But the reality is that if you're going to have a few units out, then it means we have to contend with the load shedding. So clearly it means citizens have got to make a decision here to say we possibly need to stay in the dark for a bit longer before we have some sort of consistent light.
So we are sitting with a generation fleet, a coal generation fleet that has not been properly maintained in the past. We all know that. So where we are seated now, we can't be talking maintenance. We should be talking renewal. And I've talked about this directly to Minister Mantashe during in the past 2 days or so. We need renewal of this coal fleet. And what we need to do is to identify the coal fleet that can still give us longevity. Basically, identify the coal fleet that is still part of the energy mix in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And then renew this energy fleet, basically shutting down various units like what Lungile is saying, making reference to what the COO has been saying. Shutting down various units, identifying the key components that need to be replaced, bringing in original equipment manufacturers to replace those components. It's a very difficult process because we have to endure higher levels of load shedding, but it's a necessary kind of a process because after going through that particular process, then we can have a stable and reliable supply of electricity going forward. The energy availability factor of these power stations has declined to almost, it's approaching below 50%. It's now at about 51, 52%. That is not a system that you can still maintain. It's a system that you need to renew, in my view.
When you talk about bringing in the original equipment manufacturers to service these, this was also quite a talking point, with many saying this is where the politics came in, where you needed, because of BEE, now you needed a situation where you had to have local people coming in to maintain, but it's something that has since been resolved.
Yes, that's correct. It's something that has since been resolved. And you know, if you drive a particular car from a particular manufacturer, when it gives you problems, you take it to the franchise, which basically works with the particular manufacturer, so that the manufacturer knows the system inside out. They know the components. For instance, some of the components at some of the Eskom power stations have now become obsolete. Basically, that means is that what that means is that some of these components, when one part breaks in a bigger kind of a component, instead of replacing that one part, you need to replace a bigger component, because that component that is broken was supposed to have been replaced in 2013. The original equipment manufacturers are no longer making that component or the particular part. They've moved on. Technology has improved. They are making different technologies. So that needs to be done. And the biggest challenge that we're facing now is the lack of money, because we need funding to do the renewal of this fleet. And Eskom, we know that Eskom has not been making any revenue. They've got a huge debt that they've been servicing at the same time. So government needs to come forward and make available some money, maybe with this move to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. They will make available those resources for Eskom to renew the coal fleet that's giving us problems.
But how would they make the resources available now? Because for some it would seem that you're suggesting that if the individual has changed, the minister has changed, then there would be funds available, where they constantly say that the fiscus cannot honestly continue to assist insofar as Eskom is concerned.
So it's only that some of the information we can't give. Part of what the Energy Crisis Committee is doing, which I'm part of, on the other side in terms of the technical side of things, is to look at the existing coal fleet and look at what can be done and do the proper costing of what needs to be done and at what cost. And then that information will then flow into government, and then government through National Treasury can then make available some funding. I'm just mentioning that maybe with the new move to the new Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, by that time, maybe some of that information would have gotten to government. There's quite a lot of work that's being done by the Energy Crisis Committee to operationalize the president's plan, by the way. And I think the one thing that will deal with load shedding is the results of the work that's being done by the Energy Crisis Committee. Unfortunately, government is not communicating that information, and some of us are not allowed to communicate that information because of confidentiality matters.
Lungile, just in closing, so what I'm getting from you essentially is that we need to manage our expectations. There may be a change here, but nevertheless in 2023, we should expect a bit more of the same, what we experienced in 2022.
Absolutely. So let's look at the past period that we just had now, the December period. Typically, that is a period of very low demand. You would not have load shedding or anticipated during that period. However, we were load shedding right up until New Year's Eve, and we have continued throughout. And there are two reasons for that. One is that even though demand was actually low, but Eskom was doing maintenance. We're just not sure the type of maintenance that they were doing, although I suspect it's statutory maintenance. Then, of course, they also had unplanned breakages, and outages. And basically that then brought Eskom to its knees. I mean, by the end of December, we were looking at about 50% energy availability factor, the lowest that it has ever been in this country. Then you look forward to 2023, you have one unit at Kuberg, which is out for outage. Then you also have 3 units at Mashele, which are also out. Then you still have Dupi Unit 4, which is not going to be back at least for the next year or so. And all of this, plus Eskom's fleet, which is deteriorating due to it not being maintained, means that the next 6 months particularly are going to be difficult for South Africans. We should anticipate that by next week we will be reaching higher stages of load shedding as people go back to work, kids go back to school, industry starts picking up, mining houses, demand increases again to pre-holiday levels, and then carrying on right through to just before winter. And you can appreciate that with demand increasing, that we're not going to have sufficient supply, which might necessitate higher levels of load shedding.
Lungile, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was Lungile Mashele as well as Professor Sampson Mamphweli.